Nau mai, hoki mai, and welcome to another episode of our Mind to Māori podcast with Tahi Spinks of Tau Māori Me Tahi. Thanks to our awesome sponsors BC More and Number One Electrical for bringing you this episode. Kia ora tātou e te whānau, ko Tahi toko ingoa, and today I'm joined by another really good friend of mine, Gordon Toi, and the more of these podcasts I do, the more blessed I feel to be surrounded by such awesome people. So, as usual, though, we'll start off with just slowing down and allowing those thoughts in your mind to quieten. Thoughts of the past that aren't happening right now, and thoughts of the future that may not happen. Kia ora, Gordon, and welcome along.
Kia ora, bro.
Can you give the listeners a little bit of a intro to yourself, those that don't know who you are already?
Tēnei te mihi kia tātou, I hakorongo ki ngā kōrero I pāna ki te kaupapa I tēnei rā. Nō reira tēnā tātou, ko hoki anga whakapaukara kia, whiria te maunga, rāhiri te tangata, ngā tuki mata whaurua te waka, te whakaronga tai te marae, Ngāti korokoro, Ngāti whararā, te pauka, ngā hapu, o ngā pui te iwi, ko Gordon Toi ahau. Tēnā koutou katoa.
Kia ora. So, I guess we start off at the beginning. Growing up for you, South Auckland, how was that for, how was growing up for you? And just so that some of these listeners can relate to where they may be now and we can take them on that journey.
Yeah, I grew up in South Auckland, Otara, in the 70s. And, I didn't realise it at the time, but, as we look back over our time, it was really, really great growing up in Otara at that time. There were a lot of things happening without us realising it that would have major impacts on where we are today. In terms of our tino rangatiratanga. We had the likes of Taru Rankin, Henare Mahanga, Peter Brown, Hone Harawera, Hilda Harawera, and many, many, many others that were a part of, fighting for our rights as Māori, to be heard, to be seen, to be recognised in terms of our contribution to Aotearoa. So, there were artists, there were singers, Pōri Fui Mana was one of them. There was countless people around that time that really made the place quite interesting to grow up in, And Otara at that time in the 70s was basically the new subdivision of an extension of Auckland City. And they had kind of drawn us out there from the inner city areas like Ponsonby, Avondale, New Lynn, around those areas there, out to Otara. So, yeah, that was quite an eclectic bunch of people that were there at that time. And plus, a lot of our Māori people coming in from the rural sectors looking for work at that time. They were coming in as well, so we had a good dose of our tikanga Māori, that we had there, and we kind of all amalgamated together to sort of form our hapu, our whānau groupings. Yeah, so it was really good.
Beautiful. That's so cool to hear. We've heard Otara used as having a bad rap, I guess, around those times. And when you reflect back on it, there's some amazing people that have come out of there and some amazing talent. So, yeah, that's awesome to hear. And so from there, when we're talking trades, you applied your trade as a carver initially. And so how did you get into carving and what led you down that path initially?
Well, like most young Māori, I wasn't doing too well in the education system at the time. I wouldn't necessarily blame it on the education system. It was more, my own doing, really, just being, rebellious against the, authority and things like that. And it didn't do me any good. And probably mid-70s, we had a guy by the name of Henare Mahanga come into the school as our Māori teacher, the principal Māori teacher of our school. And this guy just happened to be an exponent of just about everything that was Māori. He was, an expert in whai kōrero, kapahaka, carving, taiaha, Māori weapons. The guy could do it all. He could sing, play guitar.
One of those buggers.
Yeah, bro. He was, my nickname for him was Super Māori Fella. And he was super proud of being Māori. And that kind of rubbed off on a lot of us young rangatahi at the time. And he kind of ended up with, like most of our whānau, when they get drawn into the schools, all the bad kids go to them, and get sent to them. And he kind of, he was a hard man, but he was, because of his, because of the way that he was, you kind of respected him, because he was coming at it from a Māori perspective. And I guess for most of us Māori kids, we could relate to that, Yeah. I mean, if we messed up with him, he let you know one way or another back in the good old days. And so he had no problem sort of chasing you across the school, and he could run and tackle you and manhandle you and give you a couple of jabs into the ribs and then drag you back to the classroom, and then away you go again. So he was that type of a fella. He was a very unique character at that time for me, and and I needed somebody like that, to be fair. And he tried me with a lot of different disciplines, whai kōrero, kapahaka, reo, and eventually carving, and carving just stuck for me, as soon as I kind of, held a chisel, it sort of became my pen and paper, and that was significant for me at that time, because I didn't quite know what I wanted to do, because I didn't have a lot of options, Yeah. I didn't fill my kete, so to speak, I could barely read all right at that time. And I would often have, altercations with my teachers. So, I think the school at the time when Henare turned up was kind of thinking like, maybe, we need to, pass on this one. He's in the too hard basket. But because of the type of person that he was, he kind of took us all under his wing and looked after us and kind of protected us from the school system, And we used to follow him around everywhere, because he was then heavily involved with kapahaka and Peter Sharples, and so we had all these other great role models, Māori role models around us, and we were just the little ho-hos. There was about 4 or 5 of us that he had sort of whāngai, and we would follow him everywhere and do whatever he said, So if we were drawing up the kapahaka groups, we had to get up at 5 a.m. or whatever it was, we would do it happily, because we were with him. And outside of that the school there, he was involved with all our whānau around Otara. He would be always at the different huis around the place, whether it was Te Puki Otara or Ngāti Otara Marae or wherever it was. He would support the kids.
Yeah.
And that for us as young Māori, kind of shone a light on our potential to kind of, be whatever we wanted to be, whether it was, a carver or become proficient in whai kōrero or whatever. Anything in Te Ao Māori, he could provide for us, and he supported us through that journey. And I was just lucky that I was one of those kids that he took under his wing, because there was heaps of us. There were, not just in our school, Tangaroa, Beds Intermediate, Clydemore, other schools outside our area. He would participate and awhi those as well. I don't know where he found all the time, but he did it. And he was real super Māori fella. So we were really, really fortunate to have him. I had a couple of other teachers that I did get on with at school, but one of them was the art teacher, Mrs. Robinson. Always wondered, whatever happened to her, because I'd like to sort of thank her if I ever had that opportunity to do that, because she was very instrumental as well in my. She could see that I was attracted to the carving side of things, so she really, really encouraged me to sort of push through and carry on and develop my skills in that sense. So anyway, after all of that, Henare decided that I would be a good applicant for Te Puia, the Whare Whakairo, Wānanga in Rotorua. It was known as the Māori Arts and Crafts Institute in Rotorua. And he suggested that, we maybe apply. And of course, again, I had no idea of the magnitude of this opportunity. I was just kicking time and I was enjoying what I was doing. So I, again, didn't really sort of fathom that opportunity that was being offered, to the point where I didn't even fill out the application. Mrs. Robinson, the art teacher, she did that. She got all my artworks together. Henare did the other half and they did it. It wasn't me. Of course, with the consent of my parents as well. The first year I applied, I was too young, and I was told if I apply the following year, that they'd look seriously at my application. The second year came around, and we did the application, and I was lucky enough to get accepted. But there were 35 applicants that year throughout the motu. Wow. That's north and south, and only 4 were accepted. And so, it's like kind of carving idol, you get this, amazing opportunity to, to learn and to study under, the very best of what our country, offers in terms of, traditional Māori arts. So, we started in 1981, around there, after I left school. So I went straight from school down to Rotorua and began my apprenticeship, 3-year apprenticeship. At the end of the 3 years, I was lucky enough and fortunate enough to earn the Student of Honour Award. Oh. And, in hindsight, it amongst the boys, it doesn't really mean much in the sense that, we're all good at what we do because of the teachings that have been, taught to us. The fact that we get acknowledged for our efforts, I mean, for me was just, another notch to allow myself to acknowledge that the path that I've chosen is the right one. Yeah. And that's the only way that I've seen that acknowledgement, rather than thinking, oh, well, I'm the best of the best and all that sort of bullshit. It's for me, it's always been about just another acknowledgement that this path that I've chosen is the right one, one for you. And so you get these little lights as you progress through your career, and that was one of those moments. It just sort of sparked that. We just got to keep going, And after I left the carving school, which was a year later, after graduating, there was a conversation in the carving room where we were all working, and there was a man there by the name of Pakariki Harrison, and he had come down to scout out his nephew Henare Mato for a meeting house that he was about to start back up in Tāmaki. And so that bench was right next to mine, so I could hear the conversation, even though I wasn't a part of it. And so basically, Paki, as we called him, was, offering an opportunity to his nephew to come up and help him on this house. The name of the house was Tāne Nui Arangi at Waipapa, the Auckland University House. again, this was kind of like I had no idea of the magnitude of this opportunity. All I knew, it was a ticket back to Tamaki. And I took it. So I asked Paki if I could join, and of course he said yes. So me and Henare, we ended up going up to Auckland University. Now, you know, we lived there with Paki at his whare and his wife, Hinemo, and their kids. And it was another, you know, kind of one of those moments where you're thinking, oh man, you know, when I left the carving school, or when I left high school, I couldn't even read or write. And here I am, you know, supervising these guys at Auckland University. So, you know, the irony of how things kind of work out, you know, is sometimes blows me away. But here we were, you know, and all these professors and lecturers and stuff like that thought that, you know, we were the bee's knees, you know, so working alongside Paki. And so we did that job, and we completed that job. But the significant thing about that job for me personally was that working on that project, I got to learn the background of that whare, you know, the historical stuff behind it. It was first floated as an idea some 10 years before the house was started. It was met with a lot of negativity from the Auckland University hierarchy, and that there was no need. They saw it as no need to have anything like that. You know, we have lecture rooms, we have, you know, they came up with all these excuses. But Māori were very, very stubborn, of course, as we are, and continued to sort of protest and force the envelope that we did need our own space in order for us to be able to teach our people what needed to be taught. And there were some like really crazy things that were going on, you know, like from the different departments within the university during those 10 years. There were actual protests against not having the wharenui happen. And, you know, obviously after a lot of negotiation and years of pushing for that, Rangi Nui Walker and all the rest of the, you know, the Māori fraternity up there never gave in on that fight. And once they had selected and once they had the green light, they selected their tohunga whakairo, which was Paki Harrison, and the work began. So being a part of that project was more than just the house. It was being a part of the celebration, I guess, of all those efforts of all those people, you know, fighting to have that house built. So there's always a kind of a, you know, like there's always a kind of a background sort of side to what we do as Māori. You know, it's never ever just sort of straightforward, you know. And there's always history attached to it, and it's finding out those those elements of history that actually make the project worthwhile, sacrificing your time for, putting in the effort to make it the very best that you can, you know. And you may not get it, you know, perfect, but it's your intentions of engaging in that opportunity that allow you to kind of like contribute to elevate the kaupapa of it, you know?
And just listening to you speak about it, I see now that is a part of our history, because just about every university, school, you know, has that in it now. And if those people hadn't have pushed hard, they possibly wouldn't be here. So, they were bringing history into that time, and now that's a big part of history for where we are today. It's hard to fathom that where we are today, that it took that much effort to get it to there.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the knock-on effect, you know. That whare over there has been replicated right throughout our you know, higher education facilities, you know, universities, polytechs. Te whare wānanga o Aotearoa was another one. They tried to close that fella down, you know. And, you know, the knock-on effects of him pushing through and fighting for, you know, to establish, you know, Te Wānanga o Aotearoa, places like that, you know, down in Gisborne, you know, the art school down there. You know, all these places now where we can go to a place and learn in our environment, you know, is because of people like that, back in those days that sort of fought for us to have those opportunities in those places.
Yeah, in those times where it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I love the most about that whole kōrero is that, any rangatahi out there or any young people out there listening, if you're not excelling in certain areas of schooling or life, just find something that lights that passion within yourself, and hopefully you find someone that, can be that guide for you and never give up.
Yeah, that's a good whakatauki there. Never give up. Life isn't always going to be, unicorns and rainbows.
Yeah.
I think the good thing about struggle and being uncomfortable is that you learn to survive, no matter what you're doing, It doesn't necessarily have to be in a Māori world. It can be in a Pākehā world or wherever, I mean, if you find your passion and you find similar people that share that passion with you, I mean, the opportunity to move mountains is there, but you still got to put the work in. Yeah. You still got to put the work in, and you got to have, you got to have a bit of, you got to back yourself, you got to have a bit of faith in yourself. And that can be really, really hard when you're not making any money, when you haven't got huge networks, when you haven't got whānau support, when you haven't got someone that's lighting your way. You got to do it yourself. You're the one that's got to get up out of bed in the morning and motivate your ass to do something for that day that's going to benefit your huarahi, your pathway. So, you just got to keep going. And we have lots of examples within our culture, might run right back, to struggle and overcoming struggle and succeeding to, to levels that, are impossible. Our people were experts at that, at succeeding, and we still are, We may be fragmented, but, there's a change in the wind, and our people are starting to become, they're believing in the possibilities of being successful. Yeah. And when I say success, you don't have to be a millionaire. You don't have to be, you could be successful as a mum or a dad, you could be successful on the rugby field, professionally, whatever your perception of success is, it's good enough. It's good enough. So long as you're contributing to that, and you're consistent with it, it's, it's good enough.
Yeah. So success is meeting your own goals and your own expectations and not measuring them against anyone else's, not measuring them against society, just setting your own targets and meeting them as success. And
that's hard because you get influenced by what we're seeing on the TV, on the radio, social media. It's so easy. Oh, I got to be, have a build like Arnold Schwarzenegger and I've got to be rich like that fellow over there. I got to be this, I got to be that. Yeah. So it is difficult, learning to believe in yourself, trusting in yourself. Not being afraid of making mistakes, because you gotta make mistakes and you've got to make a lot of mistakes to actually become proficient at whatever it is you're doing. As a parent, like I made so many mistakes with my children, but you learn along the way, and hopefully as you mature, you become a better parent, It just doesn't happen overnight. There's no fucking manual to it, No one gives you a book when you're, a young father or a young mother.
Yeah.
You got to find that shit out yourself, And sometimes it's very, very difficult, for both parties. But that's life, man. And you make life what it is, You create the journey. It's not the other way around.
Yeah, definitely. And so from that early days carving, where did you find taumoko along that journey?
Tā moko really sort of didn't happen until the early 90s. And I believe that moko, the resurgence at least, or the renaissance, it began when it did because there had already been a number of Māori initiatives that were succeeding. One of them springs to mind, and that was Ko Hangareo. Ko Hangareo was that had its birth sort of, in the 80s, and those babies that were coming out of there, and they were going on to other education and such like, and after Ko Hangareo there was kura, and then kura there was wānanga. So all of these things had started to happen. Our people, I believe, our own Māori people, were re-educating themselves in terms of their Māori awareness, their Māori purpose, and that started to build momentum. Now, in the 90s, it kind of sparked with moko, and and the reason why I believe it sparked was because for years, our parents' generation, our grandparents' generation, they were told and they were taught, if you want to be Māori, you go back to your maraes and you do that sort of stuff. You don't do it here in the cities or at work or wherever. You don't do that. You don't speak Māori, and all of a sudden, a few generations down the track, you've got these Māori who have been educated in the Māori world. Their matatau te reo, their perspectives on life has changed. So no longer are they willing to internalize their Māoriness, Now, in the 90s, they want to express it. And they don't only want to express it with the reo, or dressing like a Māori, or putting the heru in their hair and the bone earrings and, the big tikis or whatever. Moko was the thing. It was a permanent record of who they are. And, and that was really, really exciting to be a part of that wave of artists that led the charge. And it, for me, to kind of sort of see where moko is now, some 30 years plus down the track, it's amazing. The quality, the dedication, the tikanga, the kawa. This is all sort of like, because, we had to kind of relearn all of that stuff, even though most of the artists in the first wave were coming from carving backgrounds or a Māori artistic background. We still needed to find our way, and each of the practitioners had to, do it in their own way, and to sort of see where it is now and how it's flourishing, in particular with our moko kanohi, with our wahine, who have always led the charge, really. When it gets down to it, our women always come through. They hold the fort. So, gone are the days where we hear about, oh yeah, I remember our nanny having a moko kauai. All these stories are alive and they're kicking, and they're it's not ever going to go back into that tapu closet from whence it was, It will now stay above ground where it should be, and carried with our people into this new world that we're about to embark on, where the perspective of Māori is at the forefront, not at the back. We're at the forefront.
Nō reira, ko motu tēnei kōrero o tēnei wā. This concludes another kōrero for this time. Visit our website taumaurimetahi.com or click on the link in the show notes to sign up to our next free bi-monthly webinar. And don't forget to follow Tau Mauri Me Tahi on Instagram and Facebook to stay up to date with all the exciting offers we have coming your way. Noho ora mai.